What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast here on the Smark Out Moment channel. We are here to talk about SmackDown, obviously, in the year 2002, where Paul Heyman was writing. We are fresh off No Mercy, and joining me on this journey back in time, as per usual, is Robert DeFelice.
SmackDown definitely won the night on No Mercy. I think we can both agree. And now it's a big night, Callum, because we're fresh off of what Paul Heyman compared to the Thriller in Manila. And there's no more Undertaker, well, after this show at least, but there will be a major, big-time player.
Are you saying that this is a big show?
I am saying this is a big show.
Well,
I
that's
am.
burying the lead a little bit there, but that's fine. We don't want to just hide too much for you. If you've watched this episode of SmackDown already, then you'll know what to expect from this. But if you haven't, there is a link in the description, as always, to the WWE Network version of this episode, so you can check it out there. If you want to get involved in the conversation, let us know what you think about this episode or any other thoughts you have about the podcast in general. Drop a comment below on YouTube. But if you're not listening to us via YouTube, via any of the other podcast feeds, then drop us a rating, drop us a review, let us know how you're enjoying stuff. And there's a playlist on the YouTube channel as well if you want to go back to the very beginning and listen to all now 18 episodes of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast, one after another, into eternity. It's a way to live at the very least.
Yeah, and I think it's a good look back at a very fun time in WWE that didn't get a lot of play before, I would say, the last year or so.
Yeah, and also, who wouldn't want to live back in 2002 at this point in time?
I know. We didn't even know the word pandemic.
I think we should. I was going for you to say COVID for a minute. I'm pretty sure the word pandemic existed back in 2002.
Well, but the layman didn't know the word pandemic, is what I'm saying.
That's true. Okay, so let's talk about a bit of news. So we talked a lot about in the 2001 Wrestling Odyssey, which is another series that you can check out on the Smark Out Moment channel, about Martha Hart and Owen Hart. And this is kind of the period of time where Broken Heart: The Life of Death of Owen Hart came out was a book for wide release. So I don't want to go into great detail about Owen Hart because we've talked at length in multiple podcasts about how terrible that whole situation is. But this is a book that kind of is a very powerful wrestling read for anyone that hasn't checked it out already.
Yeah, it's a little questionable at times, but very good book. I think in modern times, the Dark Side of the Ring documentary does a great job of covering Owen Hart, his life, his tragic death, and the foundation that his family started afterwards.
Absolutely. So we've been mentioning about how we might be doing the Rebellion pay-per-view. We may not be. It's as it's a UK pay-per-view, it holds no real bearing on things going forward. It's just a SmackDown-based show that took place in the UK. So if we have time, we might check that out and do that as a special review on Patreon. But what we do know about the Rebellion pay-per-view is that The Undertaker, who was originally booked to be on that show, as we'll find out later on in this episode of SmackDown, will not be competing in order to be by his wife's bedside as she gives birth. So Undertaker was originally supposed to be in the main event, facing Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman for the WWE Championship and Handicap match. He would be replaced by Edge.
That makes a lot more sense than them just booking Edge, because, Edge was billed as the future of SmackDown. But if we do cover that show, I will say it's a different look at anything we've seen before from either one of those three, because nothing like that ever happens again.
No, and in order to kind of make up for the fans not being able to see The Undertaker, Booker T was sent to Rebellion as well as like a make good from the Raw side of things.
That's nice.
Yeah, I guess one Texas native for another. It's kind of like perfect swap.
Absolutely.
News talking about two potential new signings to WWE, one of them being Gail Kim.
She does make her debut very soon, doesn't she?
Yeah, in mid-2003. She's currently being scouted out. She's currently working in 2002, as Felina in Toronto's Apocalypse Wrestling.
Felina.
Interesting name for a promotion, and obviously her name as well. But yeah, so she's currently being sounded out as a potential new acquisition. It's quite.
Now, was Felina? She was working near Beth Phoenix, right? Because they were kind of coming up together.
Yeah, I mean they were both working in Canada, I assume at this point in time. Obviously, both Canadian natives, so I don't know whether they were working in the same promotion at the same time because Beth doesn't get signed to the company for a couple of years on past this point.
Yeah.
She certainly doesn't make her main roster debut until I think 2006.
She makes her main roster debut in 06, and I believe she's in OVW for maybe a year and a half. So I think she gets signed within the next 2 years.
Yeah, but by that point in time, Gail Kim's pretty much gone from the company. She's already well, I think she
already on to TNA.
Yeah. So another potential signing is someone who we've spoken about in the past on Smark Out Moment, one of my personal favourites, Nathan Jones. Apparently, he's getting looked from scouts in Australia at this point in time. He's obviously worked, as we saw in the 2001 Wrestling Odyssey series, where we talked about the episode of Wrestling All Stars that he was a big part of because they were touring Australia at certain points in time. So he main evented one of their pay-per-views. But now he's currently WWE bound, it seems.
Well, we covered World Wrestling All Stars last year during 2001 Wrestling Odyssey, and it's not good, and neither is Nathan Jones, and I can't believe that he has a loose affiliation to the streak.
He does. He contributed one big boot to the Undertaker's WrestleMania streak.
He sure did.
I actually mentioned I wanted to bring this up in the Observer newsletter because Dave Meltzer, I think he gets a lot of unnecessary abuse his way, but he does I'd say occasionally, he does get things wrong. And he was very wrong about his assessment of Nathan Jones in the newsletter by saying that he has more potential than Batista does.
Well, 2020 hindsight, not the best statement, but I can understand why somebody might think in that time that Nathan Jones might have a little more credibility than the Leviathan.
He had a bit of character, Nathan Jones, about him. Like some of the stuff that he was doing in like the prison for the promo packages, he did have a personality about him. He just, couldn't work at all.
Yeah, that's a funny one. He's got more potential than Batista. That shows you how far potential is really worth sometimes.
Yeah. There's been discussion backstage at this point in time in 2002 that wrestlers should be kept away from production meetings moving forward.
Wrestlers not named Triple H? Or
there were two names specifically that were attached to this thing. Triple H is one of them. Can you have a guess at who might be the other person that they're thinking might be getting too involved in production side of things while still being an active wrestler? I'll give you a clue. He's very much linked to Triple H nowadays.
Ric Flair?
No, it's William Regal.
Oh wow! Jesus Christ! That's what the foresight there.
Yeah, just the two people that are kind of the linchpins of NXT right now are the two people that were getting involved in production meetings, letting their 2 cents in, and apparently a lot of the writing team and agents didn't really appreciate that at that point in time.
Oh, well, so what did Vince think? Like, you never really hear. What does Vince think about somebody like William Regal? Obviously, he loves Paul, but
he loved William Regal as a wrestler. It's quite clear to see that he had a lot of time for William Regal, and he did want to put him in fairly prominent spots, even if he was never like super pushing him. But I think the amount of mic time he gave to William Regal throughout his career is an indication of how much he valued him as a performer.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're gonna have two wrestlers butting in outside of a name like a Flair or an Undertaker, I think those are two of the best you can have.
One other thing I wanted to know, even though this took place earlier in October, and we kind of just missed it because it didn't get reported, at least in the things that I was looking at until now, well, I think it's still worth doing because it was a topic of great interest at the time, was Stephanie McMahon's interview on the Howard Stern show.
I remember this. Actually, I think Howard Stern themselves put this out very recently, talking about how she, was breaking the rules by dating Hunter and stuff like that. I
do have to. I mean, I've said a lot of negative things about Stephanie McMahon. I think sometimes deservedly on this podcast, but it's the idea that she has like balls bigger than most men, essentially. Like to go on a show like that.
I imagine she just direct. I imagine if Vince was a woman, this is a terrible thing to say, but if Vince was a woman, I imagine it'd be Stephanie. You know, like she has no fear, no shame, and honestly, she's good at what she does.
I would encourage people, if they haven't watched this, it is available on YouTube. You can find the whole interview on there where she talks about, mainly it is talking about her relationship with Triple H, the issues surrounding her in China, because China had been on the Howard Stern show before, and she talks about how Stephanie essentially ruined her life and ruined her career, ruined her relationship. So Stephanie responds to that.
That poor woman.
Yeah, she takes a lot of creepy wrestling fans' questions on the Howard Stern show, because of course that's the sort of audience they attract. And
I mean, that's the sort of audience wrestling's going to attract anyway.
Yeah,
but Howard Stern was going to signal boost it.
But she does like hold herself pretty well. She is quite when she's like off the leash and she's not on character, she's a very just witty and funny individual.
I wonder if she regrets today doing stuff like Howard Stern.
I think she looks back. She seems to be like a sort of character that looks back on that sort of thing and just laughs a little bit. I don't think it's something that she openly regrets, but it's something that, because it's like I don't think Triple H carries a huge amount of regrets. I mean, we're talking about one thing that he regrets very much so on the next when we do the Raw review, but other than that, it's just learning experiences at the end of the day. I don't think she has much to be regretful about that interview.
That's fair.
Speaking of things that are regrettable, let's talk about Raw a little bit. So, oh dear.
Let's just when you think about Katie Vick, this is what you think about. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about. Just go ahead.
Well, let's talk about the ratings first of all, just to cleanse the palate a little bit. So SmackDown for the this edition, so the first one fresh off of No Mercy, scored a 4.25 rating, which is one of their highest in recent times, whereas the Raw equivalent got a 3.7, so a slight drop from the previous week. Funnily enough, their next week drops to 3.4, and I wonder why.
Jesus.
So this is, it's arguable, but I think personally, there's no argument in my mind, the worst segment in the history of WWE television. And I'll say WWE from 2002 because there's a lot of seedy shit in the Attitude Era, like Terry Runnels getting knocked off the apron and having a miscarriage supposedly and stuff like that. It's just like there's a lot of bad shit in the Attitude Era, but in terms of just WWE standard things, the Katie Vick, well, how can I describe it for anyone who hasn't seen this or heard about this? And if you have, then I don't urge you to check this out, but you have to know about Katie Vick. It was Triple H dressed as Kane in a Kane mask, going into a funeral home to essentially he's portraying like recorded footage of Kane seeing Katie Vick, who was dead, in her coffin, and him getting very excited about seeing Katie Vick dead in a coffin, and supposed Triple H taking his clothes off, getting inside the coffin with a mannequin that's portraying an actual dead woman, or a characterized of a dead woman, and simulating sex with the dead body, and then ending with the infamous line, "I just screwed your brains out," while holding in his hand supposedly the brains of Katie Vick.
Okay,
Rob, please go off on this because I don't have the energy.
So, simulated necrophilia is one thing that WWE actually did. Actually insinuated that one of their characters had sex with a dead body and then held a brain saying, "I screwed your brains out." Now, over the years, this has become the stuff of memes and legend, and it's all a big laugh. Katie Vick, I think CM Punk once said, if you think that I'm the worst thing that's ever happened at WWE, I have 2 words for you, Katie Vick. Go ahead and Google it. This is awful. This is something that you would expect out of a Mad TV sketch poorly impersonating professional wrestling. I don't know why people signed off on this. I don't know
Well,
why. Like, it's
well,
one thing for Vince to
let
say.
put it this way: one person signed off on it, and everybody else told him it was a terrible idea. Please don't make us do it, and he was insistent on doing this angle.
You think that Triple H just like they're at the family barbecue and he just angrily hands him a hot dog? Like, I haven't forgotten Katie Vick. Like, just like, you made me do this.
Well, it's something that I both respect and like detest a little bit about Triple H is the fact that he knew that he was on the course to get to a top spot in WWE in the future with his relationship with Stephanie, and if he was to carry on doing what Vince told him to do. So he, even though he knew how bad this segment was and he knew how much this could hurt him reputation wise by in the audience eyes, obviously not behind the scenes, it would make him like a hero in Vince's eyes probably, but that was why he did it, is because he knew where his bread was buttered, and like if Vince tells you to jump, he says how high. That's about it, really.
And Triple H tells the story of being in an actual funeral home doing this, and Vince McMahon shouting in a real funeral home with a funeral going on in the next room, louder, or harder, louder. What are you doing? Like, Jesus Christ! Like,
Yeah.
the,
On an episode of Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, Bruce details the incident as a reason why several members of the crew wound up quitting the company very soon afterwards, because how disgusted they were at this entire segment. Fans in attendance booed the segment live. Loud chants of refund took place during the commercial break of that episode of Raw. This segment, even though, I mean, obviously the most disgusting element of it is the fact that it happened and what happened. What I find almost even more egregious is the fact that this segment went 7 minutes. It went 7 minutes on TV, because most of it is like 4 minutes of Triple H just talking in Kane's voice and cupping Katie Vick's breast. It's like it's the worst innuendo that you can ever hear and stuff like that. It's just disgusting.
And I'm gonna be frank. I think it's made far worse by the closing segment of the show, which does not get talked about nearly enough.
Yeah, so what happened in the main event of the show is that Kane and RVD, imagine this is the thing that brought them together in a tag team that would run throughout most of 2003, is them facing Triple H and Ric Flair in the main event. The show ends with Kane and Triple H fighting backstage. Kane stuffs Triple H in the back of a rental car, essentially kidnapping him, and then says, "Now I'm going to screw you," before driving off.
No. And then he says, the only question is, am I gonna wait until you're dead? Essentially saying, I am going to potentially murder you and then defile your body. Essentially proving Triple H right, quite frankly. Essentially making himself sound out to be a necrophiliac.
Yeah, it's like one of those things of like, he wasn't a necrophiliac, but then because he was accused of being a necrophiliac, he decides, okay, I'm going to be a necrophiliac.
What the fuck, Callum?
Well, let's just say that I mean, we talked about this like, because essentially this was the episode of Raw. There's nothing else. Like, we might as well have just reviewed Raw because there was nothing else really to talk about. Like, there's a few other little bits and pieces. So, Chris Nowinski defeated Jeff Hardy.
Wow.
Thanks to Al Snow's interference, because apparently they're now building a partnership between Al Snow and Chris Nowinski.
That's really weird.
And then Snow lost to Tommy Dreamer later in the show in a Singapore cane match when Chris Nowinski accidentally hit Al Snow with a Singapore cane.
Okay.
So they started building the team. I think they started building them last week, and now they started like already screwing each other in matches. We'll obviously talk about it later on, but the Big Show had a 3-on-1 handicap match against Jamal, Rosie, and Rico. You know, the 3-minute warning, who they've been pushing quite heavily as a tag team. Big Show beats all of them in a 3-on-1 handicap match and then is immediately traded to the other show.
Standard booking.
Test defeats D'Lo Brown in a match where Stacy Keibler is the special guest referee and completely screws D'Lo Brown out of the match. just helps Test win because obviously they were dating in real life and now they were transitioning that onto an on-screen couple because that
Is that
always
why that
leads to
was?
success.
Is
But
that
yeah,
I never knew that they were dating in real life.
yeah, they were dating in real life. I think,
Huh.
yeah, I think it was around about 2001, early 2002 that they started dating, and I think by the end of their partnership on screen, they'd already broken up by that
Is
point.
it
So,
fair to say that Test has a type or had a type? Like,
uh, I mean, I guess based on Stacey Keebler's future relationship history, she didn't have a type, so,
I'll say this. I
or
mean,
her standards went up essentially as time went on.
to go from Stacey Keebler to a very young Kelly Kelly, I
Mm.
think Test had a type.
And then the other major match that took place on the show was Chris Jericho, Christian, and Victoria defeating Booker T, Goldust, and Trish Stratus in a 6-person tag team match, with Chris Jericho forcing Trish Stratus to tap out to the walls of Jericho.
Oh, what a scumbag! How lovely. That's
It was the second worst
good
thing that a
to
man did to a woman on this episode of Raw.
see. You know, a little bit down the line, that sounds like it would be a great match. That 6-person tag.
Yeah, but I mean, it probably was a decent match on those side of things as well. I mean, we know further down the line that Christian and Chris Jericho against Trish and another woman Lita leads to a match. So,
Sure does.
I'm sick of talking about Raw. Let's talk about SmackDown. October 24th, 2002, the Pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee. So I
You
like
think there'll
shows
be
that.
any Elvis on this show? I mean, they're in
Oh,
Memphis.
there's gonna be a bit of Elvis on this show. There's no Jerry the King Lawler on this show, which is obviously a blessing in disguise at this point in his career. But I like a show that kicks off with an actual match straight away, and this is what we get here with Matt Hardy facing Rikishi. We still have the Matt Hardy, Mattitude.com entrance. Uh,
Damn
his
right we
fact,
do.
his facts for this week is that Mattitude is practiced in over 100 countries worldwide, and Matt's bedtime is 4 a.m.
You know, I think that would lead to some issues later in life, Pat.
I think he was being generous by saying it was 4 a.m. On the nights that Matt Hardy falls asleep, his bedtime is 4 a.m. That's at
I
that
think
point.
that's fair.
They show a replay of Hardy, assuming that he was going to get a stink face from Tori Wilson last week, but got a stink face from Rikishi instead. And so that's obviously the build up for this match. Cole calls Rikishi during his entrance 350 pounds of rump shaking fun.
That sounds like it was written by the FCC almost.
Yeah, they
Sounds
couldn't.
very tame.
Yeah, that's kind of like a Cole thing. It's like because Cole used to wasn't that famous thing when The Rock faced British Bulldog in that. I don't know if it was facing them or whatever, but it was the dog poop instance where it's just like Michael Cole just shouting down the microphone. He just rock bottom Bulldog into the dog poop, in the dog poop, in the dog poop, like just trying to be like JR, but just saying dog poop instead.
Michael Cole, poor guy, gets a lot of flack. He's a good commentator when he can be.
So Matt Hardy throws his shirt at Rikishi before the match kicks off, who then uses it to wipe between his crotch. Just do a bit of flossing there. And then he throws the shirt into the crowd. Disgusting Rikishi.
How much you think that went for on eBay? That had to sell for a pretty penny.
Yeah, just type it. This shirt was white. This is a Matt Hardy shirt that was wiped on the ass of Rikishi.
I mean, you got Hardy DNA, you got Rikishi DNA. There's a fan that paid for it.
So Matt delivers a thumb to the Rikishi, hangs him on the top rope, then hits a diving clothesline to get sort of like an early advantage on Rikishi, but Rikishi's up too big. He delivers a Samoan drop as a butt kick. He sets Hardy up for the stink face again. Hardy low blows him right in front of the referee, who for some reason decided, okay, I'll just look up towards Rikishi's face at this point in time rather than looking at what's actually happening.
I think that's good officiating, Cal.
Rikishi then reverses the twist of fate, and a move that I'm so happy to see Rikishi perform, because I know he's been doing the Banzai drop, and that's obviously a devastating move, but I love the Rikishi driver.
Yeah, and he does it well, too.
Yeah, he hits that hard on Hardy. Hardy's dead. Dead to rights. Cole actually says once again that Mattitude.com has been deleted. So no one, like, this is like an on-running thing now. This is a whole, like, this whole Matt Hardy delete thing started in 2002.
I wouldn't be surprised if he was watching old tapes and just happened to hear it and was like, I'm gonna run with it. Because that's what Matt Hardy does.
So Rikishi gets another victory. He dances around for the crowd, but he is interrupted by the Big Show, the new SmackDown acquisition from Raw. Big Show decks him with a clothesline and then gets him up for a monstrous chokeslam.
I can comfortably say flat top mustache Big Show is one of my least favorite looks for the Big Show, but probably where he did his best work.
Yeah, it's not the greatest look, and I don't like the singlet he's got on at this point in time.
I like it even less when they change it to he's just wearing a singlet top and jeans.
Oh, I prefer that just because he just looks too big in this stuff right now. Like, it got better when he started using a singlet where it cuts off at, like, the upper thigh.
Yeah,
That was a better
this
look.
look is not his best.
Yeah, he just looks like a poor attempt to try and get the King Kong Bundy singlet back into fashion.
Oddly enough, like this is the run that Big Show claims, made his career.
Oh, it's definitely one of his strongest runs. Where it's one of the runs where he's more, I think, most consistently booked.
It's just weird because like here's a guy who is 7 years in the industry, has done nothing ever but be in the main event. He starts with Hogan and basically works his way down because there's nowhere to go from Hogan. But this is the run. This SmackDown run is the run that he says saved his career.
Well, I want to talk about this because Big Show announces he's been traded to SmackDown and he's here to make an impact, saying that no one can measure up to him on the roster. Big Show then goes straight to the top and challenges Brock Lesnar and saying that Lesnar won't have the guts to face someone like him. Now, for me, this isn't exactly like Jinder Mahal coming onto SmackDown and immediately getting a title shot. But Big Show at this point in time, as was illustrated in his discussion at No Mercy, was essentially just a mid-card, going nowhere guy on Raw.
But I think the argument can be that, he should be more.
Oh,
And that
he
he's
definitely should
proven
be
in the
more.
past he could be more. Whereas Jinder and many other examples throughout the year just randomly are like, hey, you have to take me seriously now because that's what the script says.
I do get that, but I'm kind of someone who's more in favour of, like, the Mark Henry approach, because Mark Henry didn't just say that it's the Hall of Pain now and then immediately get a world title shot. He destroyed Big Show, he destroyed Great Khali, he destroyed Sheamus and other people on the way to getting that world championship match. It was a more organic process of, like, wiping away the previous Mark Henry, who was just like a pretty goofy mid-carder for the most part, and then making him a serious guy. At this point, it's going from Big Show, who his most recent match besides that 3-1 handicap match was losing to Booker T in a steel cage match, to, okay, now he's the next guy who's supposed to be facing Brock Lesnar.
Well, I think there was a mentality at this point that you can't put Lesnar against a quote unquote smaller guy. So they probably felt like, he could go from Taker to the Big Show. Maybe either Lesnar is the giant killer or this is the one that gets Brock.
So after that promo, Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman arrive at SmackDown. They're both carrying cuts above their heads based on the events of Hell in a Cell. And yeah, they just walk into the building. We cut back to the ring with Stephanie McMahon, and she has a very large trophy alongside her.
I love the fake trophies, or not the fake trophies, but the very cheap trophies.
So she introduces the new WWE Tag Team Champions to accept this special trophy. First out comes Kurt Angle, and then Chris Benoit comes out later. Cole announces Angle as a Grand Slam champion. I don't think he actually uses the phrase Grand Slam, but he says essentially Angle's won every single title that there is to win in WWE.
Well, it was a banner year for Kurt Angle because really he accomplished all of this within the span of not 1 year, sorry, 2 years, because he wins the WWE title at No Mercy. I think he won the US title in 01 with the Alliance.
We won the
He
European
really
Championship before that. So he was European champion, and he was Euro-Continental champion actually in
Right.
early 2000. Then he transitioned from that to the world champion, won the US title when that was still part of WCW. This is his first tag team title run. So yeah, he's completed it all in very, very quick time.
Is he, and don't quote me on this because there may be like a 2004 or something where I'm off, but he might be somebody who has worn a championship once a year and every year.
I don't believe he won a title in 2004 or 2005.
Because I know from the early 2000s, like from 2000 to 2003, he's always got a belt at some point. He ends with that strong world title reign, but maybe you're right. Maybe 04, 05.
I'm pretty sure that his WWE Championship reign that ends in 2003's Brock Lesnar is his last title reign in WWE until he wins the World Heavyweight Championship. Yeah, in 2006.
That's unfortunate because he was on quite the run there.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like at that point you don't need to get the titles Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle just can be Kurt Angle.
That's fair.
So Kurt Angle immediately grabs the trophy when he comes out, like just immediately starts celebrating. And as soon as Benoit gets in the ring, he makes a very concerted effort to keep the trophy away from Benoit. So whenever Benoit's like walking close towards it, he moves the trophy to the other side of him or anything like that. So he's very keen on keeping hold of that trophy. He talks about Stephanie was right to force them to team together so he could single-handedly win the tag team titles at No Mercy.
They really rely on that trope a lot. Now that I see it, they rely on that.
The
Like,
Baszler
no, I
and
am the
Nia
tag
Jax
team
stuff.
champions.
Yeah.
A lot.
Oh yeah, the Daniel Bryan and Kane. They're kind of doing a similar thing with Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler right now.
Right.
So he accepts the trophy as captain of their team. Says that he'll take the trophy back to his wall of memorabilia back in his home. But then Benoit grabs the trophy himself, tells Angle to leave his Olympic-sized ego back in the locker room, and that Benoit is the captain, and he would have kicked Angle's ass if it wasn't for Stephanie's stipulation. Angle then says that, rightly, at the very least, that he won the match, so he's the star and Benoit's the supporting player. They then get into like this big tug of war over the trophy. Benoit lets go. Angle sends the trophy flying into Stephanie McMahon. The trophy's broken slightly. Stephanie's knocked down. Angle helps her to her feet. Stephanie, I think quite deservedly, slaps Angle in the face.
Yeah.
And then
probably for a lot of reasons.
And then Benoit and Stephanie start laughing uproariously at all this. And then Stephanie turns and slaps Benoit as well. I know I've made comments in the past about Stephanie emasculating people, but she was well within her rights to slap the fuck out of these two guys here.
Yeah, she was. She really was.
She calls them unruly children and says that if they want to get at each other tonight, then they can do it in the ring. So the main event of the show will be Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit. The winner will get the slightly broken trophy now.
I really liked the segment. I enjoyed Stephanie's role. Like I like that they didn't question her authority. You know what I mean? Like that's a small thing in wrestling, but it goes a long way for me, and I enjoyed that.
So you ready for some Elvis?
I'm so ready for some Elvis.
So Jamie Noble comes out dressed as Elvis to mock the Memphis crowd. He looks ridiculous, but I mean, we were saying that the cruiserweights don't have any character.
Yeah.
And then he comes out dressed as that.
We get a lower third for a bikini match. Not a bikini contest, a bikini match on Velocity, which must have been some type of special occasion because it says it starts at 8 o'clock on the new TNN, and I guess we're still in the era where it's not Spike because it's the new TNN.
Yeah, so I think that was kind of their indication that nobody's watching Velocity. What can we do to try and spike a rating? Okay, we're gonna have
titties.
Gonna have titties. Yeah, maybe those titties will fall out of the bikini because that's like the big that must be the only draw of that match.
And you get the same ads too. Like they don't cater network edits to like whatever your local market would be, right?
No, I don't believe so. So he basically says that he's going to do the greatest Elvis impression ever, and then he just says some Elvis phrases in his own voice,
which is the very best thing you could do there.
Thank you very much. All that like very honky. It's actually more honky tonk man than Elvis.
Hey, listen, If you're gonna do an Elvis impersonation, you might as well impersonate an Elvis impersonator.
Do you have an Elvis impersonation you can pull out here?
I do not.
I don't even have the American accent that I can pull off there, so I'm very much stuck on that one. Tajiri comes out, he immediately hits a handspring elbow, and it knocks Noble's wig off, which was a funny moment. Just love people's wigs falling off. But Noble wrestles a significant portion of this match while still wearing the golden glittery jacket.
He's a multi-talented person.
Living the gimmick.
Yes, he is.
Tajiri early on finds the glasses that has been knocked off on the ground, and then he does some funny Elvis moves as well to get this going. So, it's one way to really get the crowd interested in watching. Essentially, this is a rematch for the Cruiserweight Championship, so gets to that's the way the crowd got interested in it much more than they did at No Mercy.
I know this is like nobody will know this, but over on NWA TNA, they currently had a trio of men known as the Flying Elvises.
Yeah, one of them being Akio, who would soon become one of Tajiri's henchmen in a Japanese triad.
Right,
Yakuza
or
triad,
otherwise
yeah.
known as Jimmy Wang Yang. So, like, Elvis impersonations were hot? I don't know, like, it's very strange to me.
I mean, to be fair, TNA were working out of Nashville, so...
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So, there was a pretty unique spot here where Tajiri reverses a Tiger Bomb attempt by lifting Noble directly from that into a Tree of Woe, and then delivering his excellent sliding baseball drop kick to the face of Noble from there.
Love the Cruiserweight action in 2002.
Oh yeah, this match is great. I mean, it's pretty short, but it's still like really great action. Nydia pulls Tajiri off the apron at one point. He goes to kick her, but then he kicks the ring post instead. So that's the heat, essentially, is that Tajiri's left leg is now injured. So Noble immediately, like a hyena, attacks the wounded leg. He then goes for a buzzsaw kick of his own because he's a cocky bastard. He blocks, Tajiri avoids it. He then blocks a kick that Tajiri uses with his bad leg. Then he mocks Tajiri because of it. And Tajiri then decks him with the good leg. Like, really, it's like really funny action. Like, they were out there to have fun in this match.
And they did very well. I did like how, yeah, babyface Tajiri is going to kick Nydia in the head. That'll make him a babyface.
Yeah, exactly. 2002, very different time. So,
very much so.
Tajiri kicks Noble into Nydia on the apron when she tries to get involved again. He gets a 2 off an O'Connor roll. Noble then does the same, but bridges through it, which was obviously very impressive anyway. Then he reaches his hands out, grabs Nydia's hand on the outside to get extra leverage and steal another win. So yeah, very good match.
And heels being heels. Yep. Noble is always a heel. I love it.
For some reason, we then cut to the commentary where Taz has grabbed both the wig and the glasses and he's wearing them as well.
And what does he tell Michael Cole to do, Callum?
I can't actually remember this side of things. You're going to have to fill that one in.
Feel the bush.
Was that showing his political leanings at that point in time?
Could have been.
So we cut to backstage. Dawn Marie is backstage looking for Tori Wilson, with basically 2/3 of her breasts on display in her dress. Yeah, that's about as cut down the middle as you possibly can get, while still not breaking any censors.
I don't know how. I don't know why people think that wrestling just sexualized women.
Someone in production tells her that Tori's in catering. After the break, Dawn meets up with Tori in catering. She says Tori is the better woman, and she apologized for everything that she's done against her and her family, obviously being very disingenuous, as you'd expect. She says that she does care about Al, despite the massive age difference between them, but she'll break things off because of Tori, and Tori says great and just leaves.
Yeah.
So Tori wasn't really doing up to much on the acting front on this side of things.
This is an angle that I really wish I could Thanos snap from memory.
So speaking of Angle, let's talk about Kurt Angle, which is he's backstage and has been confronted by Los Guerreros. And they talk about there's a rumor that Benoit was waiting until the end of the tournament to do some damage to Kurt Angle. They said that Benoit wanted to break Angle's neck in the crossface later on tonight, and basically leave it like that. I didn't really see where they were coming from with that one there. I know they've been playing head games with the tag champions basically for the last 2 weeks.
they want them to be as revved up and as intense as possible.
That's true. And we see Edge and Mysterio walking backstage towards the ring for their next match, which is Edge and Rey Mysterio versus Los Guerreros. The winner of this match would be the new number one contenders for the WWE Tag Team Championships.
Couple things here. Angle's shirt is the dumbest. I wanted to mention this in the first segment. Angle's just wearing a shirt that says "Submit" on it, and on the back it says "The Truth Won't." I don't.
Okay.
Sure. And I really like these shots of people like walking to the ring. I miss stuff like that. Like, I feel like you don't see a lot of that now, where it's like, okay, they're ready for their match and they're headed to their entranceway.
One thing I noticed before this match started was that one of the sponsors for this episode of SmackDown was the original Jackass movie.
Topical. Steve-O was just on AEW.
Yeah, and the Jackass movie does come out in late 2002, so I just thought that was an interesting little tie in there.
We do know that Steve-O was supposed to wrestle at one of those SummerSlams, and that never came to fruition.
Didn't he wrestle Umaga in a match at one point?
He was supposed to.
Oh, okay. Because they did that angle with was it him and Johnny Knoxville getting beaten up by Umaga?
Yeah, they get the crap beat up by Umaga, and then they were gonna wrestle at SummerSlam, and never happened. So
this match is great because, again, it's these four people involved. Like, these two teams are awesome, and this match is... I mean, it's quick again. Like, it's not as long as the match we saw at No Mercy, which is a phenomenal tag team match, but this is still just excellent wrestling.
Worth noting, the camera cuts to a sign that says Edge will be the next WWE champion, which would be a very long time before he would become. But it at least shows that people were getting behind Edge.
So there was a really awesome sequence early on in the match where Mysterio blocks a double team attempt into a Hurricane Rana onto Chavo, sending Chavo to the outside. Then Edge does a slightly clunkier version of a head scissors to Eddie on the outside to send them both to the floor. Mysterio then dives to the outside onto both of them. Los Guerreros catch both of him. Edge then tries a baseball slide. The Guerreros lift Rey Mysterio above Edge, so Edge just slides in between everyone, and then they throw Rey Mysterio straight into Edge.
Just smooth as butter, too.
Oh yeah, there's so much trust and so much coordination in that entire spot.
Wouldn't be 2002 if I didn't notice another offensive sign in the crowd that said, "Ray cuts my tobacco." So, that's where we're at, guys.
I mean, I guess he has to be doing something while Eddie is mowing the other guy's lawn.
Your guy's lawn, yeah.
Again, Mysterio plays an excellent babyface in peril. Eddie's using the tag rope to choke Mysterio at one point. Then Mysterio does this absolutely massive back body drop to Eddie Guerrero. And that's just, like, huge. They do some more stuff. One of my favourite spots of just anything in wrestling is Eddie Guerrero doing a tilt the world backbreaker to Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, because again, smooth as butter.
Absolutely. They just work. They're just a perfect match for each other. Edge makes the hot tag, nails both Guerreros with a double flapjack at one point. Eddie prevents Chavo from being hit with a 619, then dives in to make the save at the last second following an Edge spear. So, again, getting some...
Edge is still doing those spears like it's nobody's business.
No, it's, like, it is very sharp and very to the point, those spears.
It's weird because I know we've talked about, like, is Edge a guy worth doing the spear because he's not as big as a Roman or a Goldberg. But when he does it with this precision, like, you can see how he started doing it.
Yeah.
It's a very good move for him.
They do eventually hit a 619 to Chavo, followed by a nice powerbomb seated senton combo. So they're getting some tag team moves together, so that's good signs. But as the ref tries to get Mysterio out of the ring, Eddie breaks the jackknife pin that Edge decides to do with a helo.
Perfect.
He then drapes Chavo onto Edge, but now the referee is trying to get Eddie out of the ring the same way he did Mysterio. So Mysterio uses this opportunity to jump him, drop the dime with the springboard leg drop onto Chavo. Then he drapes Edge onto Chavo. Eddie standing on the apron, like, smiling and smirking because he thinks he's pulled one over. The referee
and he hears the 3 count, and he's like, yes.
And then then Tony Chimel announces that Edge and Rey Mysterio have won, and Eddie goes ballistic because, it's just a really excellent finish, great match. yeah, we're off to a really good start ring-wise on this show.
This is so good. The character work, man. And
The character's fantastic.
Like, that's what it is. When it comes down to, like, yeah, the guys today, they can wrestle. But the fact that there's so much personality in every one of these moves is what matters.
The Undertaker is marching backstage, and he tells someone to tell Lesnar that he's going to be waiting for him in the ring. They then play a big video package highlighting Lesnar beating Taker at No Mercy.
Quite frankly, I'm surprised they played as many clips of the Hell in a Cell match as they did.
Yeah, the amount of blood that was shown on there, I don't know. I don't know how the standards and practices were working at that side of things at that point in time. Taker comes out and says that he's waiting for Lesnar to come out and meet him eye to eye. Before Lesnar can come out, though, Paul Heyman is out on the stage saying that he lists all of Lesnar's accomplishments and then says Lesnar has no interest in coming out and facing the Undertaker. But even before Heyman could finish that sentence, Lesnar's music hits and he marches to the ring. Again, they're sowing the seeds of Lesnar doesn't give a fuck what Heyman thinks anymore.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think Lesnar ever did. I think Heyman overstepped his boundaries as an agent, but this was ingenious storytelling.
So they get face to face in the ring. Taker says that everyone is saying that if his hand wasn't broken, then he would have beaten Lesnar. I mean, I don't know who he's talking to. I assume he's just talking to his friends, and they're the ones that are saying that. But Taker says that it is an excuse, and Lesnar had his number on Sunday. He says that 5 years ago he might have beaten Lesnar no matter what injury he'd suffered, but it isn't 5 years ago, it's today. And
they would fight 13 years later. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. That is a fair point. I mean, Taker says that he appreciates head games that Lesnar applied, saying that was his trademark for the last 12 years. Taker says that he's beaten the best, and on Sunday, Lesnar was the best. So
good way to put Brock Lesnar over.
Yeah, he's doing a good job here of just saying everything that Lesnar needs. Lesnar stops Taker from leaving the ring. He grabs the microphone, saying that he needed an edge to beat the Undertaker, and he used Sarah to get it. So he basically just says, like, yeah, okay, I needed an extra edge to beat someone of your stature. So it's kind of like a semi-babyface term with that, showing that he respects the Undertaker. He respected the Undertaker enough to essentially cheat a little bit to get the victory over him. So
I like it because it's better Lesnar Undertaker interactions than we would normally see.
So he hands the mic back to Taker, walks away. So he leaves Taker, and then Taker, as we mentioned, like, we're in 2020 now, and Undertaker has never really officially retired. But we're here in 2002, and Undertaker is imitating to the crowd like he's about to retire. So, but before he can make that sort of announcement, the Big Show comes out, and he makes probably the biggest stretch in wrestling history by saying that the reason why Lesnar beat Taker is because Show beat him up for the last 2+ years. Like, that is a leap of faith right there.
Hey, listen, he has confidence in his abilities.
So he calls Taker a broken down has-been, and Taker says that he'd rather be a broken down has-been than a giant that never was. And that gets a nice reaction from the crowd.
Good line, man. Good line.
And now this is where it starts to get a little bit far-fetched to me. Is that Taker starts walking up the ramp, and he is being directly followed by the Big Show. And Taker is constantly looking behind him to see what Big Show's doing. Big Show keeps holding his hands up saying, okay, I'm not going to do anything. They eventually get to the top of the ramp, and Big Show says, okay, I'll go first if you're so worried about what I'm going to do. So Big Show walks behind the curtain, and Undertaker decides now's the perfect opportunity to turn my back on the curtain, to raise my hands in front of the crowd, to celebrate a little bit. And then, obviously, what happens is Big Show charges out, decks the Undertaker, knees him in the gut, throws him against the staging, and then lifts him up and tosses him off the stage through a bunch of crap on the ground. And yeah, that is Undertaker written off, essentially.
First of all, one of the best bumps I've ever seen Undertaker take. Like this, he looks like he flew. And that was unique. Of course, because it's American Badass Undertaker, he will not be stretchered out, and he will
Oh, I wanted to
walkway
get.
of
Oh,
his
yeah, I
own
really wanted to
power.
get to that point. Yeah, that's like. I mean, there was loud "Big Show sucks" chants, so at least that did get over the crowd. But I'd say, like, after the break, Taker is still being tended to by Stephanie, production crew. Like, I spotted Arn Anderson, Dean Malenko, Sergeant Slaughter, John Laurinaitis all out there. Load of referees, doctors, Edge and Rey Mysterio are out there to help the Undertaker as well. And then, as you rightly pointed out, he's put on a stretcher and a neck brace, but Undertaker doesn't need a stretcher because he's the Undertaker, and so he walks out. And this is the thing that I fucking hate about 2002, 2003 Undertaker is that this is supposed to put Big Show as he's the next like big challenger to Lesnar. He's going to be the next ultimate star of our ultimate heel star in our promotion, and so and Undertaker just completely no sells his attack by walking out.
Yep.
It's just like he just spent like a good 5 to 10 minutes putting Lesnar over and doing the right thing in that regard, and now he just screws over the next guy coming through. It's
But
like,
yeah, but you can't be completely weak. Come on, Callum.
I mean, it's not like we knew Undertaker's not coming back until the Royal Rumble, so he's gone for a while, and by that point, people would have remembered Big Show throwing him off, and maybe they would have forgotten about the fact that he walked out under his own steam, but. It's just Undertaker seems to, at this point in time, be just so focused, laser focused on putting himself over at every opportunity.
He really must have bought into the fact that he was
the locker room leader.
Yeah, like the big dog, locker room leader kind of guy. And I don't know, it kind of killed it for me, but like I said, I wish we were covering Undertaker getting buried and coming back as the dead man, because that is the best Undertaker ever. Like the dead man run that he has in 2004 through about 2009, that's the best Undertaker.
So we cut backstage with Dawn Marie asking Funaki to go
Lord.
get Al Wilson, saying that Tori Wilson is looking for him. Funaki grabs him, sends him on his way. Dawn then stops him, like coming through, and says that it's for the best if they don't see each other anymore. Before like giving him a kiss on the cheek. But before she can walk away, she says, "Out of the few men she's ever been with," which gets like a big laugh track from the crowd because Dawn Marie's a slut.
She's
Like
a
that's
whore.
that he was the most passionate man that she's ever experienced. And then Al kisses Dawn on the lips for several seconds. Like that was a good like 10 seconds.
It's a very passionate kiss. He's a very passionate man.
Yeah. And then they break and hug, and I guess this relationship is going to keep going.
It's going to keep going, all right.
So we have a rematch from the previous week's SmackDown. It's John Cena versus Billy Kidman again. Cena's still not he's still not quite the Doctor of Thugonomics yet. He's still doing the hand motion, but he's still wearing the
I never want
garish
to see
trunks.
John Cena in salmon trunks again. This is a very awkward look for John Cena.
So there's an early enziguri to John Cena, who sells it excellently from Kidman. He then catches Kidman diving to ringside and uses this to drive him into the ring post. So Cena looks more comfortable now as a heel than he did as a babyface.
I think he was tapping more into like the prototype heel stuff he was doing.
Yeah, he's exploiting his size a lot more. He goes after Kidman's lower back again, spine buster for 2. Kidman fights back eventually. He's consistently selling the back though, which I do appreciate. I do appreciate someone who just sells and doesn't just forget about the injury as soon as his comeback is going.
Kidman, I'm gaining a lot of just like love for Billy Kidman. He was great in this era. I watched him. I did a watch along with WrestleZone of the '98 Halloween Havoc. Kidman is so underrated.
He's a very, very good worker. I think some people look beyond that side of things because, and I also say this openly, I think he has the worst shooting star press in history.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Maybe
He
it's
was
not
the first guy I ever saw do it, though.
I mean, it's not the worst because Matt Seidel at the last AEW pay-per-view is the worst shooting star press in history. But it's very reckless, his shooting star press. It's like,
thank God he didn't use it on Cena here, otherwise we might not have a future of the WWE.
So Kidman eventually reverses the powerbomb attempt by Cena into a Hurricane Rana, and he follows suit with what Cena did the previous week by grabbing the ropes. So I'm okay with a babyface doing that because essentially getting one over from being screwed over last week, so I'm totally fine with that. So that Kidman gets the win through cheating. Cena goes ballistic on the referee for missing this, even though he did the exact same thing last week because he's a heel and so he's a hypocrite. Kidman tries to intervene, I think almost to like protect the referee. Cena decks him and then just like beats him down the mat for a while, throws him into the ring post.
It's very clear to me that John Cena learned how to be a gullible babyface from Billy Kidman. Why the hell would you go back in the ring?
Yeah, why'd you just grab him on the shoulder, just like,
Yeah.
hey man, what you doing? Like sort of thing, and then he just gets
Hey
absolutely
man,
decked.
I cheated. Like, it's okay.
So yeah, so Cena's now full blown heel.
Full blown heel. I love it.
And next week we're going to see the evolution of his character. So we
Oh,
can look forward to
Halloween.
that. Backstage, Mark Lloyd asks Lesnar if he accepts Big Show's challenge. Brock quite rightly asks where Funaki is, because there is only one announcer on SmackDown to care
That's
about.
right.
He says that like him and Funaki go way back; they have a nice history together. But he then says if Big Show wants an answer, he knows where he can find him. So it basically just points to the locker room and says, okay, if Big Show wants to have a match, he can just come here and ask me for it. We
Fair
then
enough.
cut to another thing backstage with Los Guerreros and now at Benoit. And Eddie's now doing the whole sincere act, saying that he owes it to Benoit to be truthful now, saying that he messed up and he wants to be his friend still. And after everything they've been through, he doesn't want this to come between us. Guerrero says that he just wants to show Benoit some respect, but Benoit brushes him off and asks what this really is all about. And Eddie says, it's about nothing, I just want your friendship, and they just walk away. But not before Benoit says that what Eddie said earlier to Angle might be right. So basically just intimating, yeah, I might break his neck in the crossface. Who knows?
I do want to note they do a quick cutaway to WWE.com. And just, again, the year that we're in, 2002, it's a generic Netscape browser, and it's just like, does anybody even know what Netscape is today? Is that still a thing?
No, I mean, I can vaguely remember it as well. It's just a case of, I don't know, even though it looks terrible, I have a strong feeling that site was more well maintained than the current WWE.com
I guarantee
website.
you it was. I can guarantee it was. It's just an amazing throwback, and you see how far the internet has come.
So Big Show stomping around backstage. He enters Lesnar's locker room where he finds Heyman holding the WWE Championship. Heyman decides that he's gonna just try and placate the Big Show, saying he's like so happy to see Big Show on SmackDown, but he won't allow this match to happen because he's scared of the Big Show. But Lesnar shoves him out of the way. Now he's getting physical with Heyman, and he goes chest to chest with Big Show. Lesnar accepts Big Show's challenge. Big Show smiles and walks away. So, yep, the match is set in stone. We're going to have a WWE Championship match between Brock Lesnar and the Big Show.
Better or worse than the potential Hulk Hogan match?
Honestly, I think the Big Show Brock Lesnar feud is highly underrated in the grand scheme of things in WWE.
I think it's one of the better things show ever did.
Yeah, I think I would argue that obviously the standout feud for Lesnar during his initial run is with Kurt Angle, but this is the second biggest one, him and Big Show.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Let's talk about
realistically, like Brock Lesnar's mainline career, his full-time career was just Big Show and Angle and Taker.
Yeah, and then Goldberg, and we all wish it wasn't, but it's like. But he got in a few other people in between there. He had a short feud with Cena when Cena was starting up.
Right, he does get like some solid matches out of like Benoit and Guerrero. And...
his feud with Eddie Guerrero, like that the build up to No Way Out is some of the best, most character filled stuff that Lesnar ever did.
Brock Lesnar ever does. Brock Lesnar, I think his full-time run is very underrated.
So we talk about the main event. It's Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit, so you know already that this is going to be a pretty great match. And this is like in my mind, it's a condensed version of the match that we saw at Unforgiven. It's like, okay, you've got 8 minutes to work. Okay, so we'll just turn that match into a shorter match.
And it's fantastic.
Yeah, they just start with a load of mat wrestling, which is great. It's pretty by the numbers to start with. Angle takes advantage, like clubbing blows and suplexes, so he gets the advantage early on. Benoit kicks back, clotheslines Angle in the back of the neck, which is a nice spot. The clotheslines from behind are just always just infinitely seem more dangerous.
Yeah, and I say this all day. These guys, all the SmackDown 6 we get to see on this card, but especially these two, from a one-on-one standpoint, the best in the world.
So they trade back body drops, and then they trade multiple German suplexes each. Benoit avoids an angle slam, then turns him inside out with a German suplex because they are in love with that spot right now. But it is an awesome spot, so keep doing it. Benoit then leaps 3/4 across the ring with a diving headbutt to the back of Kurt Angle. I mean,
Hindsight?
hindsight, hate that spot. In the moment, that spot is fucking awesome.
Amazing.
I can't help it. It's just, it looks so impressive. I just so wish he never did. If he only did it, he saved it for special occasions.
I will say this, this particular headbutt seems safe. He looks like he's very much covering his own head. The side of his head barely grazes Angle's shoulder. So it looks good, and upon rewatching it, it's very safe.
So Angle, Benoit applies the crossface after Angle kicks out. He rolls Angle away from the ropes using his own foot, but Angle uses the opportunity to grab the ankle, make a pin, and then reverse it into the ankle lock because these guys know how to fucking work. Angle slams 2, back to the ankle lock. Benoit rolls through the ankle lock into the crossface. Benoit then goes back up to the top rope. Angle throws him off with a belly suplex, gets another long 2 count. And then we get a bit of shenanigans towards the end of it. Eddie comes out, he distracts the referee. Chavo walks in, hits Angle in the back with a title while he's got the ankle lock applied to Benoit. Benoit then rolls Angle up off the back of this, gets the pinfall. So, yeah, Benoit wins the broken trophy. But, of course, there's not much trophy left after the post-match stuff where Angle hits another Angle slam to Benoit. He chases after the Guerreros, but they're long gone into the crowd. He picks up the trophy at ringside and then just smashes it on every single surface that he can find, on the announce table, the ring apron, the steel steps. He just absolutely decimates the trophy. And yeah, that's the end of the show. So it's trouble in paradise for the new WWE Tag Team Champions.
The biggest takeaway for me here is hindsight, it's easy to say, of course, Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, and to a degree, Edge and Mysterio can get main event segments. But to see a show which featured the WWE champion end with the tag team drama is very refreshing.
So this show, in-ring wise, is pretty awesome. There's no bad match on this card. I think the closest thing to it is Cena against Kidman, but that's still progressing a story, and it wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad match at all.
So, yeah, there's a lot of really good in-ring stuff. The tag team match is awesome. The main event is awesome. I think Rikishi and Matt Hardy is a very funny match, and it's well wrestled. The Jamie Noble Tajiri match is very good as well, and it has a nice little comedy element to it. It's still not perfect. We've still got Dawn Marie and now Wilson canoodling backstage. But we have a new top heel with the Big Show coming in. So yeah, this episode progressed quite a lot, really. A good follow-up from No Mercy.
I think this was a great follow-up from No Mercy because it did something I wish WWE did today, which is it said, No Mercy is done, on to the next. Whereas I think nowadays they'll linger in certain elements. And this is just straight up all right, new tag team champions, new number one contenders, new champion, new challenger. They got straight into the build to Survivor Series.
Yeah, all great stuff. And next week we have, what should be a very fun episode to look forward to, which is the Halloween special of SmackDown, which is built around a big Halloween party, which they don't do anymore.
These days, maybe the biggest thing is the Halloween party because of what happens.
Yeah, because the Halloween party, we get to see a lot of people in colourful costumes. We get to see one of the most bizarre backstage segments in WWE history.
Oh my god.
It's not quite Katie Vick, but it is completely out of another parallel universe.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that. We won't spoil it if you're not aware of what happens. But let's just say if you've been following this throughout the course of things, you won't see it coming.
Yeah.
If you basically just know what WWE is like, especially nowadays with their booking, then of course you saw this coming. So that's kind of the way we'll talk about it. There's more. Big Show has a match with Rikishi, his first match on SmackDown. The main event is Brock Lesnar versus Rey Mysterio. We get to see more backstage infighting between Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit. We get to see, I think it's Dawn Marie and Tori Wilson in some sort of like Halloween costume contest.
Why not? Of course it is. Like,
so yeah, there's plenty to look forward to next week. It should be another fun edition of SmackDown to review. But
I would say that like we're getting full on to the new Big Show. We are getting a good Kurt Angle Eddie Guerrero match. Can't complain. Brock Lesnar, Rey Mysterio. Can't complain. John Cena becomes John Cena in a lot of ways, and a moment that is so awkward that it's almost better to put it out of your mind.
So plenty of stuff to look forward to next week, but we'll just leave you with a few plugs here. Of course, this episode of SmackDown came right off the heels of No Mercy, and we reviewed No Mercy for the Patreon. So if you're at the $10 tier or above, then you can have access to that episode. So if you haven't listened to it already, it's there waiting for you on Patreon, as well as all our other pay-per-view reviews that we've done for the year 2002 so far. Of course, if you can't spare $10, then even $1 or any amount of money goes a long way to just helping keep the lights on here on Smark Out Moment, and more great content come your way through that stuff. There's other ways you could support us financially, obviously by checking out the Redbubble and TeePublic merchandise shops. If you can't support us financially, then you can share our stuff on social media. You can follow us on social media on Facebook, on Twitter, Smark Out Moment, at Smark Out Moment. There's the Mega Maniacs. You can join our crew there, join some like-minded wrestling fans. Make sure you're updated with the latest goings-ons in the Fantasy League and all the other great stuff that's going on there, like pay-per-view discussion threads and all this other stuff. For Tony, who's obviously not here and doesn't join us for the Paul Heyman stuff because he's a very busy man. And part of the reason why he is so busy is because he has Fanboys Anonymous to think of as well. That is our sister site, the Blue Brand, where you can check out all the geek culture stuff that's going on. So everything that's revolving around movies, television, video games, you can find it all over there. Has its own Facebook, has its own Patreon, all this other great stuff as well. So follow all that stuff. Rob, you want to throw out some things? Because I know you're a very, very busy man as well these days.
I am a very busy man. So obviously today was a fantastic episode of the Paul Heyman SmackDown. I will also be over on Fightful today covering Impact Wrestling Bound for Glory. So, check that out. Check out everything Fightful's got going on YouTube. Check out Fightful Select. Check out WrestleZone. I'm on their show Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. I am on Fightful's show on Wednesdays. I'm here in Smark Out Moment every Wednesday, every Saturday, every Friday, and tomorrow night for the Hell in a Cell review. And you can follow me on Twitter at DudeFelice.
Cool, that's all going great. So obviously you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. And yeah, we will see you tomorrow for the Hell in a Cell post show. We'll both be on that one alongside Tony and maybe Wago as well. And we'll see what other matches they actually came up with.
Yeah, because we still don't know.
We're recording this for sense on a Thursday, so we still don't know if they've got anything. I assume by SmackDown they might have one or two more matches.
We would all hope that by the time this airs, they have more matches for Hell in a Cell.
So we will see you then, and we'll see you next week for another edition of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast. But for now, this has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.